For today's DC Multiverse review, we are looking at the Ross exclusive Superman from Batman Hush. And before I talk about the figure, let's take a quick look at the packaging that he comes in. As you can see, with most of these Ross exclusive DC Multiverse figures, they are packed in this blister card packaging style. This is the front side where the figure would have been stored in when it was in the packaging. And on the back side, it is pretty much the same as most DC Multiverse boxes. You do have your illustration of the source material that this figure is based on, and you have all the text information, which is usually on the under part of the box. There is the price tag for $12.99. That is how much these figures retail for at Ross. And that is pretty much it with the packaging. It's very simplistic because these figures do not come with any accessories. There's no card, there's no stand. It is pretty much just the action figure by itself for $13. And here is an example of what a figure looks like in the packaging for anyone who's curious. This is Aquaman from Wave 2. And yeah, that is pretty much what you're paying for. It's just the action figure. And having no accessories, you can get away with that with Superman here, right? Because he does have his fist hands, so you can get him into some cool action poses and flight poses. But with Aquaman, especially if you are choosing to buy this particular figure, let's just say that, you know somebody that's getting into collecting DC action figures and they don't have an Aquaman, well, this is a good figure to get them, but not having a Trident accessory is going to hurt this figure because Aquaman is always known for having his trident, right? And a good example is the back part of the box. So there you go. And we will be talking about this Aquaman figure in the next review. So stay tuned for that. And that is pretty much everything I can say with the packaging. And, let me know what your thoughts are with this line. Because, well, I don't really think there's much to think about here. Because this is pretty much a sign of this is the end of DC Multiverse under Mcfarlane Toys. This is why this line exists. Because usually, most toy companies will never produce action figures for Ross. That is not a normal thing. But in this case, I'm assuming they're just dumping excess stock at Ross with whatever they have still around in their warehouses or their factories. I assume that's the purpose of this line. However, there is one figure that I just want to mention that they are reissuing, which I think they could have reissued in a different way. White Knight Batman. Why is this a Ross exclusive? Well, this is pretty much a way to make people who wanted this figure have a hard time finding it. It's not good for those folks who have been wanting this version of White Knight Batman for their Batmobile. So, yeah. I don't know why they decided to do it this way. They could have easily just reissued this figure the normal way. Maybe change his cape to like a claw-fired cape or something. They could have done such a better job. But yeah, this is not good for the folks who need this because I'm telling you, these Ross exclusive DC Multiverse figures, they're not easy to find. Like, they're actually kind of difficult to track down, which is really strange. I don't know, maybe it's just distribution. I have no clue. Yeah, that is pretty much everything I have to say about this whole Ross exclusive line. Let's just jump into the aesthetics of this figure now so I don't drag this review on too long. Taking a closer look at the Hush Superman figure, let's start with his face sculpt. I really like the face sculpt for this figure. It actually does a pretty alright job capturing the design of what Superman looks like in this comic, and especially when it comes to representing Jim Lee's depiction of Superman, it's there. I can see it present, and we don't see much of his character designs getting action figures to begin with, so whenever there is a action figure of, Jim Lee's design of a character, it's always nice to see. Now, is this the best depiction of the Hush Superman in action figure form? I will let you be the judge to decide because there is the Mafex version of the Hush Superman, which looks different from the way that Mcfarlane sculpted their version. So depending on which one you prefer, you have your preferences. Now, in terms of the hair sculpt here, not bad at all. I actually like the way that it came out as well. It does not have the blue highlights like you see with some of the other Superman figures, but nevertheless, not bad at all. as I said. All right, let's move on to the rest of the aesthetics for this figure. So as you can see, it is reusing the infected Superman body buck, and that is a debatable sort of, discussion. Is this body buck good for the Hush Superman figure? I can see parts of it working, but I can also see parts of it that are just not good at all. So I just don't like this body buck anymore, mainly because with how many Superman figures that they've released at this point in time reusing this mold, it became, to the point where everybody was just getting fed up. We just wanted a 2.0 body buck where Superman can scale properly, and that is the one problem with this figure mold. He does not scale well with the Hush Batman figure, which you will see in the comparisons when we get there. So that is the one unfortunate thing about reusing this mold. Now, the colors here are nice. I do like the bright blue, the bright red, and the bright yellows because that is the Superman color. And for the boots down here, it is painted in this nice bright red color to, go with the sculpting here that is sculpted, right? So that is very nicely done. And in terms of the skin tone for this Superman, it is on the more paler side. I don't know if my camera is showing it properly, but it's not too pale. It's good enough. It actually matches up with the original release of the Hush Superman figure, the first one that they actually made, which was the gold label version. I don't have that figure, unfortunately, but I have looked back at photos of it. It is pretty much the same skin tone, so if you do have that version and you do put them next to each other, it will go nicely together. Now, something interesting that they did do is that they did reuse this Superman figure, the mold of the other one, I believe, not this one, the other one, and they did repaint it so they can use it for the Doomsday 2-pack. And as you can see, this one has a more tanner skin tone compared to the one that we are looking at, which is more paler. So it's interesting that they decided to reuse this for that 2-pack, which I guess works. So technically, this is the third Hush Superman figure, if you want to count it as one. In terms of the sculpting of his cape, it is a windswept sort of pose here, as you can see. It is a soft PVC cape, and the unfortunate thing with this copy of the figure, because it is a Ross exclusive version, is that the way that they packaged this figure, the cape was pretty much wrapped around the entire figure like this, with a plastic wiring holding it. So I have used a hairdryer to fix this problem, but it is warping back, as you can see. So I think I might need to put more work into, fixing it, because it's supposed to look like this. Let me just zoom out. This is what it's supposed to look like, right? But as you can see, it's just going back like this. So yeah, that's not great. But the back part of the cape does have the S emblem, which, if I remember correctly, I think the Hush Superman figure was the first one to actually have the S emblem printed on its back. Because for a while, most of the Superman figures we kept getting from Mcfarlane did not even have the S emblem on the back of the cape. So that is something that they finally changed. And that is pretty much all I can say for the aesthetics for this figure. It is very simple, but the overall look is not too bad. It's decent. But again, I have my problems with this body buck. So that is pretty much it for the aesthetics. Let's move on to the articulation now. Starting off with his head sculpt. He can look up. So if you want to get him into some flight poses, it is possible. He can look down, which is decent. He can turn his head left and right, tilt his head side to side. So the articulation for the head sculpt here is actually good. Sometimes the head sculpts do have trouble looking up, looking down, all that stuff, but this one has no problems. Now for the arms, he can lift them up this much on this side. Same thing with the other side, no problems. He can swing them back and forth. Now for this one, the cape will get in the way, but as you can see, it does go back and forth. Now, if we were to actually have it the right way, it will probably run into the cape. So because of the fact that it's warped, it's allowing his arm to actually swing back and forth. So usually it would be this side that would be the only one that can do that. He does have bicep swivel. He does have double jointed articulation, but because they're so freaking stiff, I have actually heated up those arms and loosened them, but they have stiffened back up, which is not great. But there is double joint. It should work if you heat it up. And there is wrist swivel here. And of course, articulation with the wrist. So there's that. So yeah, standard articulation with the arm. For his upper torso, there is a really good range of motion here for rotation. You do have a leaning forward. No, you don't. It actually sucks. Leaning back, it's decent. And then for the waist, it does rotate. It's like really tight as well. Leaning forward, not, yeah, it's not working. I thought it was actually working for a second. No, it's not. Okay. And then going back, leaning back. Okay, you can lean back all right, but it's not the best. And now, for the legs, does he have thigh swivels? Oh, they do work on this side. This side does not work. This side does. So, yeah, if you heat this up, you could probably loosen it to get it to rotate. So there should be some thigh swivel movement a little bit. Doing the splits. Nope. You're not really going to be able to do splits. Kicking out. Actually, let's see how far it can kick. No, that's as far as it can kick. Okay, not great. He does have double jointed legs. He also has articulation in the feet, swivel, and toe articulation. And that is pretty much all the articulation for the Hush Superman figure. So, yeah, not too bad. You can get him into some flight poses for sure, and some action poses. There are going to be some, restrictions with some parts of the articulation, but overall, I think it's solid for what it is. Yeah, I'll just say that. Not too bad. Alright, that is pretty much everything for the articulation. And finally, let's get to the comparisons. For the first comparison, here is the Hush Superman figure next to the Hush Batman figure. And in terms of having these two next to each other, I think they go nicely together because they are from the same source material. But in terms of the scaling, that is where I have an issue with, because I can't overlook the scaling. Having Superman be shorter than Batman by a few inches is just weird. And especially if you were to use the Superman figure with other characters, it's also strange too, because they're taller than him by a few inches. And that is the problem with why I don't like the reuse with this body bug during this period of time, which is why I did not even buy this figure when it came out, and why I waited till now. Because, well, the line is coming to an end, and I was like, you know what, I don't have this Superman figure, might as well get it now. But the point is, when you start to see how this reuse gets out of control to the point where a character isn't scaling well anymore with all the other characters, it's just not good at all. And why would you want any more versions of Superman figures in this way? And this is why when people say that Mcfarlane treats Superman like ass, I mean, he does, right? Not saying that these figures are bad. Now, as a Superman figure by itself, it's fine. But when you start to, build a shelf and have it next to other characters, that's where you start to see the problem with the reuse here that is just not benefiting the character. This is pretty much what these two characters look like next to each other. And if you can overlook the scale, then it's fine for you. But if you're like me who really cares about scaling, not great at all. So that is the first comparison. Now let's bring in a few other figures. Let's have him next to the battle damage version. And as you can see, the colors are very different between these two. So this is a more, I don't know what kind of blue this is. It's not a dark, well, yeah, it is kind of like a dark blue, but it's like a matte finish blue. So there he is next to the Superman from the 2-pack with Doomsday. And one other figure that I can grab in. Actually, let's do a few comparisons. Let's put him next to Atom Smasher from the recent 2-pack. And as you can see, that is how tall Atom Smasher is next to this Superman figure. And for the last comparison, I'm going to grab this other figure that's on my table. Here he is, next to Grid. So yeah, there are some of the comparisons with this Superman figure, and that will wrap up the comparisons. And that will be it for today's review. And if you found today's review of the Hush Superman figure informative, do give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. And one last thing that I do want to say before I end today's review, I do apologize for this inconsistent upload pattern. The last 2 weeks after the Wonder Woman review, I actually caught a cold. Like, it got even worse. So I am better now, and I think I should be able to get things rolling again. I said this before. I don't know anymore at this point. I don't want to make promises I can't keep. But everything I have planned since January to March, I have had to push back, but I will get those reviews out regardless. It's pretty much me looking back at other older DC Multiverse figures, as well as the new ones that I do pick up this year. So yeah, there's just a lot of content that I've had to delay, but hopefully I can get things going again. So yeah, stay tuned for all of that stuff. And I hope all of you have had a wonderful March. So yeah, all right, with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.